I don't know who you think you are, but you need to leave before I call 911.
Ma'am, this is my apartment.
Yeah? You look like you're here to rob somebody. Don't move.
I'm not moving anywhere. I live here.
Last chance, I'm calling the police.
You don't have to. I already am the police. I'm the police chief.
The security camera footage would later show exactly what happened that June 21st, 2024. A quiet afternoon in downtown Miami in the hallway of a luxury apartment complex. A black man in his 30s was unlocking the door to his new apartment, carrying moving boxes, minding his own business. No disturbance, no threat, no crime. But his new neighbor, a white woman named Linda Carrington, saw something she didn't like. She stepped out, blocking his path, phone in one hand, fear and bias in her eyes, demanding to know why he was there. When he calmly said, "Ma'am, I live here," she refused to believe him. She called 911, shouting that a suspicious black man was breaking into an apartment. Seconds later, that man reached into his pocket, pulled out a gold badge, and said the words that changed everything. "I'm the police chief, and you just filed a false report." That man was Marcus Hall, the chief of police for the entire city of Miami. And what happened next would leave a neighborhood humiliated and a nation shaking its head. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. The security camera at the end of the fourth-floor hallway captured everything. A bright, clean corridor in a luxury apartment building in downtown Miami. White tile floors, modern lighting, floor-to-ceiling windows at the end letting in afternoon sunlight. It was the kind of building where professionals lived, lawyers, doctors, executives. The kind of place with a waiting list and background checks and homeowners association rules about noise and parking. At 2:34 p.m., a man entered the frame. Marcus Hall, 34 years old, black, wearing jeans, sneakers, and a black jacket. He was carrying a moving box, balancing it against his hip, while he used his other hand to unlock apartment 4C. He moved efficiently. No rush, no suspicious behavior, just someone unpacking a new chapter of life. Marcus Hall had just signed a lease for this apartment 3 days earlier. He'd spent the morning loading boxes into his car from his old place across town. Clothes, books, kitchen supplies, the essentials you move first before the furniture truck arrives. He'd been looking forward to this, a fresh start, a place closer to work, a building with a gym and a rooftop view of the Miami skyline. Marcus was the chief of police for the city of Miami. He'd risen through the ranks over 12 years, patrol officer, detective, lieutenant, deputy chief, and finally, at 34, the youngest chief in the department's history. He'd earned the position through hard work, smart leadership, and a commitment to community-oriented policing. His colleagues respected him. His officers trusted him. The mayor had personally appointed him. But that afternoon, Marcus wasn't thinking about his title or his responsibilities. He was thinking about where to put his couch and whether he'd need to buy curtains for the living room windows. He set the box down inside his apartment and headed back to the elevator to grab more. He didn't notice the woman watching him from across the hall. Linda Carrington had lived in apartment 4D for 3 years. She was 42, worked in marketing, and she considered herself a concerned neighbor. She knew everyone on the floor. She organized holiday parties. She reported maintenance issues to the building manager. And she noticed when something seemed off. That afternoon, she'd heard movement in the hallway, footsteps, the sound of boxes being moved. She'd glanced through her peephole and seen a black man unlocking the apartment across from hers. Apartment 4C had been vacant for 2 months. She'd heard it was finally leased, but she hadn't been informed about the new tenant. The building manager usually sent an email. Linda stepped out into the hallway, coffee mug in hand, and watched as Marcus returned with another box. "Excuse me," she called out. "What are you doing here?" Marcus stopped and turned, surprised. "Good afternoon. I live here." "No, you don't. I know everyone on this floor." "I just moved in today. Apartment 4C." She looked at him, then at the boxes, then back at him. Her expression shifted from curiosity to suspicion. "Do you have proof of that?" Marcus set the box down. "Proof?
I have keys. I have a lease. I'm standing in my own apartment. I've never seen you before. That's because I just signed a lease 3 days ago. Linda crossed her arms. I still don't believe you. Let me see some ID. And that's when Marcus realized what was happening. He'd experienced moments like this before. Not often, but enough to recognize the pattern. A black man in a space where someone didn't expect to see him. Automatic suspicion. Demands for proof of legitimacy. He took a slow breath. Ma'am, you don't have the right to ask me for ID. I live here. That's all you need to know. Linda's jaw tightened. Well, we'll see about that. She pulled out her phone and stepped back toward her door, keeping her eyes on Marcus.
Marcus watched Linda dial, his expression neutral, but his mind racing. He knew what was happening. He'd seen it countless times in his career. Citizens calling 911 not because of actual criminal activity, but because of perception. Because someone didn't look like they belonged. He'd responded to calls like this as a patrol officer, investigated complaints like this as a detective, reviewed policies around them as chief, but he'd never been on the receiving end. Not like this. Linda spoke into her phone, her voice loud enough for Marcus to hear. Yes, hi, I need police. There's a black man trying to break into an apartment on the 4th floor of my building. He won't show ID. I don't know who he is. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Break into an apartment. He had keys. He'd unlocked the door with his own keys. On camera. Ma'am, he said calmly, I'm not breaking in. I live here. You're filing a false report. Linda ignored him, continuing her call. He's aggressive. I feel threatened. Please send someone quickly. I'm not being aggressive. I'm standing here with a moving box. The dispatcher's voice was faint, but audible through Linda's phone. What's your address? Linda provided it. 4th floor, apartment 4C. Hurry. Marcus rubbed his temple. He could de-escalate this. He could pull out his badge right now and end it. But part of him, the part that had spent 12 years navigating bias, the part that was tired of having to prove he belonged everywhere he went, wanted to see how far she'd take it. So he waited. The police are on their way, Linda said, her tone triumphant. You'll regret this when they get here. Marcus looked directly at her. You're right about that. The security camera caught the tension. Linda standing near her door, phone still in hand, eyes fixed on Marcus. Marcus standing calmly near his apartment, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Neither spoke. The silence stretched. In the distance, sirens. Faint at first, then growing louder. Linda's confidence seemed to grow. She'd call the police. Help was coming. The suspicious man would be dealt with. Marcus remained still, his jaw tight, his patience wearing thin. A minute later, the elevator dinged. The building's security guard, Rafael Torres, stepped out. He was in his late 50s, had worked the building for 8 years, and had a reputation for being reasonable and professional. What's going on here? Torres asked, looking between Linda and Marcus. Linda spoke first. This man is trying to break into 4C. I called 911. Torres looked at Marcus. Sir, do you live here? I do. I signed the lease 3 days ago. I have keys. Torres nodded. Can I see them? Marcus pulled out his key ring and held it up. Apartment 4C. I can unlock the door if you'd like. Torres walked over and watched as Marcus unlocked the door, pushed it open, revealing moving boxes already inside. Looks like he lives here, Torres said, turning to Linda. But I didn't know. Ma'am, if someone has keys and is moving boxes into an apartment, they probably live there. Linda's face flushed. I live just being cautious. You are profiling, Marcus said quietly. I was not. Yes, you were. You saw a black man and assumed I was a criminal. You didn't ask if I was a new tenant. You didn't check with the building manager. You just called 911. Torres shifted uncomfortably. Sir, I understand your frustration, but what? She filed a false report. She accused me of breaking and entering when I'm standing in my own home. Linda's voice rose. I had every right to be concerned. No, you had bias, and you weaponized 911 because of it. The siren stopped. 2 Miami police officers were about to arrive in the building. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket,
Linda, what are you doing? Marcus pulled out a gold badge and held it up where both Linda and Torres could see it. Chief of Police, City of Miami, Marcus Hall. The hallway went silent. Torres's eyes widened. Chief Hall? Yes, Rafael. It's me. Linda's face drained of color. Her hand, still holding her phone, slowly lowered. You're the police chief? I am. And you just called 911 on me for moving into my own apartment. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Marcus turned to Torres. Call down to the officers arriving and let them know the situation is resolved. Tell them the chief is here and there's no emergency. Torres nodded quickly. Yes, sir, right away. As Torres called down to the lobby, Marcus looked at Linda. You made an assumption based on my skin color. You filed a false report. You wasted police resources, and you did it all because you couldn't imagine that a black man might live in your building. She stammered. I didn't mean... Yes, you did. You meant exactly what you did. You saw me and decided I didn't belong. That's bias, Miss Carrington, and it's dangerous.
2 Miami police officers stepped off the elevator. Officer James Rivera and Officer Sarah Chin, both familiar with their chief. They saw Marcus standing with his badge visible, Torres on his phone, and Linda looking like she wanted to disappear. Rivera stopped. Chief? Rivera, Chen, false alarm. Miss Carrington here called 911 because she didn't believe I lived in this building. Chen glanced at Linda, then back at Marcus. You're moving in here, sir. I am. Signed the lease 3 days ago. Was carrying boxes when my neighbor decided I looked suspicious. Rivera tried to suppress a smile. Understood, Chief. Do you need us to file a report? Yes. Document the false 911 call. Miss Carrington accused me of breaking and entering, which is a crime I wasn't committing. I want it on record. Linda's voice was small. Chief Hall, I'm sorry. I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You assumed. And your assumptions put me in a position where I had to prove I belonged in my own home. I was just trying to keep the building safe. No, you were acting on bias. And if I wasn't who I am, if I'd been someone without a badge, without authority, this could have ended very differently. You know how many 911 calls like this turn into tragedies? How many black men get hurt or killed because someone assumed they were criminals? Linda looked down. I really am sorry. Marcus's voice softened slightly. Your apology doesn't undo what you did, but maybe it'll make you think twice before you dial 911 on someone who's just living their life. He turned to his officers. File the report. Send me a copy. And let dispatch know to log this as a false emergency call. Yes, sir. After the officers left, Marcus stood in the doorway of his apartment, looking at Linda. Miss Carrington, I don't want to make this a legal issue. I don't want to sue you or press charges. But I need you to understand something. The next person you call 911 on might not be the police chief. They might just be someone trying to exist. And your bias could cost them their freedom, their safety, or their life. Linda nodded, tears in her eyes. I understand. I'm truly sorry. Marcus nodded and closed his door. Inside his apartment, surrounded by unpacked boxes, he sat on the floor and exhaled. He'd handled it professionally. He'd stayed calm. He'd used his position to de-escalate rather than escalate. But he was exhausted, not from moving, but from having to prove once again that he belonged. The building's security footage was never supposed to go public, but someone, a staff member, a resident, someone with access, leaked it to social media a week later. The 40-second clip showed everything. Marcus carrying boxes, Linda confronting him, the 911 call, the officers arriving, Marcus revealing his badge. It went viral within hours. Twitter. Karen calls 911 on Miami police chief moving into his own apartment. Instagram. This is why we need to talk about racial profiling. TikTok. Clips with commentary, reactions, discussions.
The video was shared millions of times. News outlets picked it up. Cable news ran segments analyzing the encounter. The headlines varied. Miami police chief profiled by neighbor while moving in. Woman calls 911 on black man. Turns out he's the police chief. Viral video shows police chief confronted in his own building. The story resonated because it was so clear. There was no ambiguity, no room for interpretation. A black man doing something completely normal was treated as a criminal by someone who couldn't imagine he belonged. And the twist, that he was the police chief, made the irony impossible to ignore. Linda Carrington issued a statement through her attorney 3 days after the video leaked. I deeply regret my actions on June 21st. I made a mistake based on fear and misunderstanding, and I take full responsibility. I have reached out to Chief Hall to apologize personally, and I'm committed to examining my own biases and doing better. The statement was met with skepticism online. Fear and misunderstanding? No, racism. She's only sorry because he's the police chief. What about all the people she's done this to who weren't powerful? Memes spread. Linda Carrington became shorthand for weaponizing 911 against black people. She became the face of a problem that extended far beyond one hallway in Miami. Chief Marcus Hall held a press conference a week after the video went viral. He stood at a podium in City Hall. Cameras focused on him, reporters waiting. I want to address the incident that occurred at my apartment building. I've received an apology from Ms. Carrington, and I've accepted it. I don't believe she acted with malicious intent. I believe she acted from bias, the kind of unconscious bias that too many people carry without examining. He paused. But here's what concerns me. If I wasn't who I am, that call could have gone very differently. I had a badge to show. I had authority that made people listen. Most people don't have that. Every day, black men and women are stopped, questioned, and reported for doing ordinary things, walking in their neighborhoods, sitting in their cars, moving into their homes. And when 911 gets called, those situations can escalate quickly. We have to ask ourselves, why do people feel so quick to call the police on someone who just doesn't look like them? And what responsibility do we all have to examine our assumptions before we dial? A reporter raised her hand. Chief, will you pursue legal action? No, this isn't about lawsuits. It's about education. It's about understanding that calling 911 isn't a tool for managing your discomfort. It's a tool for emergencies. And my moving boxes into my apartment wasn't an emergency. Another reporter. What message do you have for people who've experienced similar incidents? Marcus looked directly at the camera. You're not imagining it. It happens, and it's not okay. Document it when you can, report it when it's safe, and know that you deserve to exist in spaces without having to prove you belong. The press conference was covered extensively. Marcus's words were clipped and shared across social media. Public opinion largely supported him, praising his restraint, his professionalism, and his willingness to turn the incident into a teaching moment. But there were critics, people who said he was playing the victim, people who defended Linda, arguing that she had a right to be cautious. Those responses revealed the deeper divide. Some people understood the harm of racial profiling, and some people would always find ways to justify it.
3 months after the incident, Marcus Hall sat in his apartment, fully unpacked now, furniture in place, curtains hung, a place that finally felt like home. He'd had no further issues with Linda. She'd moved out a month after the video went viral, citing harassment from other residents and online strangers who'd identified her. Marcus hadn't celebrated her departure. He'd never wanted to ruin her life. He'd wanted her, and everyone watching, to learn something. He gave one final interview, sitting on his couch, sunlight streaming through the windows. People ask me if I regret how I handled it, if I wish I'd shown my badge right away to avoid the confrontation. And honestly, no, because showing my badge would have stopped the situation, but it wouldn't have exposed the problem. The problem is that bias happens every day. It happens in hallways, in stores, in parks, in neighborhoods. And most of the time, the person being profiled doesn't have a badge to flash. They just have to endure it. My hope is that this moment makes people pause before they dial 911. Makes them ask, is there an actual emergency,
Or am I just uncomfortable? Because discomfort isn't a crime, and being black in a space isn't suspicious. The interviewer asked, "What would you say to Linda Carrington if you could speak to her now?" Marcus thought for a moment. "I'd say, thank you for apologizing. But more importantly, thank you for being willing to examine your biases. That's hard work. Most people avoid it. But if you do that work, you'll be better for it. And so will everyone around you." The security camera footage froze on a single frame. Marcus unlocking his door, boxes stacked beside him, sunlight illuminating the hallway. It was an ordinary moment, a man coming home. But it had become something more, a reminder that ordinary moments, for some people, are never guaranteed to stay ordinary. Because bias doesn't announce itself. It doesn't always look like hatred. Sometimes it looks like concern, like caution, like a phone call to 911. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Sometimes justice isn't a courtroom verdict. It's the quiet realization that the truth can't be profiled. Chief Marcus Hall didn't need to sue Linda Carrington. He didn't need to destroy her life. He just needed to show the world what bias looks like when it's captured on camera. And the world watched, learned, debated, reflected. Not everyone came away with the same lesson, but enough people did to matter. Because stories like this, uncomfortable, frustrating, infuriating stories, are the ones that force us to examine what we believe, what we assume, and what we're willing to change. Marcus Hall moved into his apartment. He unpacked his boxes. He lived his life. And the hallway that once echoed with suspicion and accusation now stands as a reminder. Belonging shouldn't require proof. And 911 isn't a tool for policing who you think belongs.
Daniel R. Moore had been with the Midtown City Police Department for just under a year. 11 months of patrols, 11 months of write-ups, and 11 months of supervisors quietly noting that his instincts often fired long before his judgment did. His academy scores were passable, not impressive, with evaluators repeatedly flagging his habit of assuming guilt based on presence rather than behavior. Those warnings were filed, acknowledged, and ultimately ignored because the department was understaffed, under pressure, and unable to turn away recruits who met the minimum standard on paper. On a calm Thursday afternoon, those unchecked instincts met a man unlocking the front door of his own building. What should have been an uneventful moment outside a quiet apartment entrance instead became the spark that would end Moore's career, cost the department $750,000, and expose how a single officer's assumptions can ignite a disaster in less than 30 seconds.
Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light.
Midtown City, a mid-sized urban center in the Northeast with tree-lined streets, renovated brownstones, and a diverse population of young professionals, families, and longtime residents. Derek Lawson, 34 years old, was walking toward his apartment building at 437 Riverside Avenue. He'd lived there for 3 years, ever since accepting a position as a civil rights attorney with the Department of Justice's Community Relations Division. His work focused on investigating police misconduct cases, reviewing federal civil rights violations, and ensuring law enforcement agencies complied with constitutional standards. Derek had spent the day reviewing depositions for an upcoming case. Long hours in a windowless conference room, reading testimony, taking notes, preparing arguments. He was tired, mentally drained, ready to get home, change clothes, and decompress. He wore business casual attire, gray slacks, a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, leather dress shoes. His messenger bag hung across his shoulder, filled with case files in his laptop. His keys were already in his hand as he approached the building entrance. The apartment building was a 3-story structure with 12 units, modest but well-maintained. Red brick exterior, black iron railings, a single entrance with a heavy wooden door that required a key to unlock. Derek had walked through that door hundreds of times over 3 years. His name was on the buzzer directory. His mail was delivered to Unit 2B. His rent checks cleared every month without issue. This was his home, legally, practically, undeniably. He inserted his key into the lock and turned it. The mechanism clicked. The door began to open. And that's when Officer Daniel Moore's voice cut through the quiet afternoon air. "Hey man, why are you heading into that building?" Derek paused mid-motion. The door opened just a few inches. He turned and saw a uniformed police officer standing about 10 feet away on the sidewalk, one hand resting on his duty belt, the other gesturing vaguely toward the entrance. Officer Moore was in his late 20s, clean-cut, with the rigid posture of someone trying to project authority they didn't yet naturally possess. His Axon Bodycam was recording, a small lens mounted on his chest, capturing everything from his perspective. Derek's initial reaction was confusion. "Just going inside. What's the problem?" Moore took a step closer, his eyes scanning Derek from head to toe. "I've been circling this block. You've been hanging around." "No," Derek replied, his tone calm but firm. This was a lie, a convenient fiction that Moore would later claim justified his suspicion. The truth, visible on the body cam footage's timestamp, was that Derek had been on the block for approximately 45 seconds, the time it took him to walk from where he'd parked his car half a block away to his building entrance. There was no loitering, no suspicious behavior, no activity that could reasonably be described as hanging around. But Moore had seen a black man approaching a building in a neighborhood that was becoming wealthier and whiter, and his brain had filled in a narrative that didn't exist. Moore's training at the academy had included modules on implicit bias, on recognizing how assumptions can cloud judgment, on the importance of gathering facts before acting. But training is one thing. Real-world application under the pressure of patrol, especially for a rookie still forming his instincts, is something else entirely. And Moore's instincts had been shaped not just by 11 months on the job, but by a lifetime of absorbent cultural messages about who belongs where, who looks suspicious, and who deserves scrutiny.
"I need to ask you some questions," Moore said, his hand now moving to rest on his radio. "Can you step away from the door?" Derek felt the familiar tightening in his chest, the mixture of anger and caution that comes from being black in America and knowing that these encounters can escalate quickly, regardless of who's right. But he also knew his rights. He knew police procedure. He knew what officers were legally allowed to do and what they weren't. "Officer, I live here," Derek said, keeping his voice level. "I was unlocking my door. Is there a specific reason you're stopping me?" Moore's jaw tightened. He didn't like being questioned, didn't like the challenge to his authority, didn't like that this man wasn't immediately complying. "I'm investigating suspicious activity in the area. I need you to cooperate." "What suspicious activity?" Derek asked. "What did I do that made you stop me?" Moore didn't answer directly, because there was no answer. There had been no suspicious activity. No call for service, no report of a crime, no description of a suspect. Moore had simply been driving his patrol route, had seen a black man approaching a building, and had decided that warranted investigation. His training told him he needed reasonable suspicion to detain someone. His instincts told him that a black man near a building was inherently suspicious. The conflict between those two things should have made him pause, reconsider, disengage. Instead, it made him double down. "Let me see your ID," Moore said, his tone shifting from questioning to commanding. Derek shook his head slightly. "You don't have a reason to ask for my ID. I haven't committed any crime. I'm standing at my own front door." Under the Fourth Amendment, police officers must have reasonable suspicion that a person has committed, is committing, or is about to commit a crime before they can legally detain that person and demand identification. Reasonable suspicion requires specific, articulable facts, not just a hunch or a feeling. The standard exists precisely to prevent arbitrary stops based on nothing more than an officer's assumptions about who looks out of place. Moore knew this, theoretically. He'd learned it at the academy. But in the moment, with his authority being challenged, with the man refusing to immediately comply, his knowledge of constitutional law was overridden by his ego and his unchecked biases. "All right, stand still," Moore said, stepping closer. "I'm not joking. You're being detained." "For what?" Derek's voice rose slightly, not in aggression but in disbelief.
I'm entering my own apartment. Moore raised his free hand defensively, palm out, as if Derek had made a threatening movement, even though Derek hadn't moved at all. Sir, you need to calm down. You're making this harder than it needs to be. This is a common deflection tactic. When an officer lacks legal justification for his actions, they shift the focus to the citizen's demeanor, suggesting that compliance would resolve the situation, implying that resistance or questioning is the real problem. It places the burden of de-escalation on the person being wrongly detained, rather than on the officer who initiated the unlawful encounter.
A woman walking her dog on the opposite sidewalk slowed down, sensing the tension. She pulled out her phone, not yet recording, but ready. A teenager on a bike stopped at the corner, watching. These were the first witnesses, the first people who would later provide accounts that contradicted Moore's version of events. Derek could feel the situation slipping towards something worse. He knew how these encounters could end. He'd reviewed case files where routine stops became violent arrests, where black men who did nothing wrong ended up injured, charged, or worse. He also knew that he had rights, that giving in to an unlawful detention reinforced a system that needed to be challenged, not accommodated. "Officer," Derek said, forcing his voice to remain steady, "I'm a federal civil rights attorney with the Department of Justice. I know my rights. You do not have reasonable suspicion to detain me. I'm asking you to step aside and let me enter my home." Moore blinked. The mention of federal attorney registered, but not in the way it should have. Instead of making him reconsider, it seemed to make him more defensive, as if Derek's credentials were a challenge rather than a clarification. "I don't care what you do for work. Right now, you're being detained as part of an investigation." "What investigation?" Derek asked again. "What crime are you investigating? What specific facts gave you reasonable suspicion to stop me?" Moore's Bodycam audio picked up his breathing, faster now, shallow. His hand tightened on his radio. He glanced around, noticing the woman with the phone, the teenager watching. He was starting to realize he was in a situation he didn't know how to exit without looking wrong. But instead of de-escalating, instead of acknowledging the lack of legal basis for the stop, he escalated. "Turn around and put your hands behind your back," Moore ordered. Derek took a step back, closer to the door he'd been trying to enter. "No, you have no legal authority to arrest me. I'm not turning around. I'm not putting my hands behind my back. I'm going into my home." Moore moved quickly and grabbed Derek's arm, not aggressively but firmly, his hand wrapping around Derek's bicep in an attempt to control his movement. "Stop resisting. Don't touch me. I live here." Derek pulled his arm back, not striking, not fighting, just removing himself from the officer's grasp. It was a reflex, a natural human response to unwanted physical contact, but Moore would later characterize it as resistance, as justification for escalation. The woman across the street raised her phone and started recording. The teenager did the same. Within seconds, there were multiple cameras capturing what happened next, creating a record that would prove essential. Moore grabbed Derek's arm again, this time with both hands, trying to turn him around. Derek braced himself against the doorframe, refusing to be spun around, refusing to be put in handcuffs for the crime of entering his own building. "You're making this worse," Moore shouted, his voice strained with effort and frustration. "I'm not making anything worse," Derek shouted back. "You're violating my rights." A second passerby, an older white man in a business suit, stopped and called out, "Officer, what's going on? What did he do?" Moore ignored him. His focus was entirely on Derek now, on maintaining control, on proving his authority. He reached for his handcuffs with one hand while trying to hold Derek's arm with the other. "Sir, if you don't comply, I will charge you with resisting arrest." "Resisting arrest for what?" Derek's voice was loud now, carrying down the block. "What am I being arrested for?"
This is the circular logic of unlawful detention. An officer stops someone without legal justification. The person questions the stop or refuses to comply. The officer escalates to arrest. The person resists the unlawful arrest. The officer then uses that resistance as justification for the arrest, ignoring that the initial detention was illegal. It's a trap designed to criminalize the act of asserting one's rights. More people were stopping now. A small crowd was forming, phones out, recording from multiple angles. Someone called out, "He said he lives there. Why are you grabbing him?" Moore's body cam captured his own heavy breathing, the shakiness in his voice when he spoke into his radio. "I need backup at 437 Riverside. I have an individual resisting detention." Derek made a decision. He stopped pulling away, stopped bracing against the doorframe. He stood still, hands at his sides, and spoke clearly and loudly so every camera could hear. "I am not resisting. I am standing still. I am not threatening you. I live in this building. My name is Derek Lawson. I live in Unit 2B. You are violating my Fourth Amendment rights." Moore hesitated, his hand still gripping Derek's arm. The sudden compliance threw him off. He'd been prepared for continued resistance, for a justification to escalate further. But Derek's calm, clear statement of his rights, spoken loudly for the witnesses and cameras, left Moore in an awkward position. "Let me see your ID," Moore repeated, but his voice had lost some of its commanding edge. Derek looked directly at the body cam on Moore's chest. "I will show you identification, but I want it on record that I am complying under protest. This stop is unlawful. I have committed no crime, and you will be held accountable." He reached slowly, carefully into his pocket. Moore's hand moved toward his service weapon, a reactionary movement that several witnesses would later describe as excessive, given that Derek's movements were clearly non-threatening. Derek pulled out his wallet and removed 2 items. The first was his driver's license, which listed his address as 437 Riverside Avenue, Unit 2B. The second was a gold-embossed credential in a leather case. United States Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division, Attorney Derek Lawson. He held both items up for Moore to see and for every camera recording to capture. "Here's my driver's license showing I live at this address. And here's my federal credential identifying me as a Department of Justice civil rights attorney. You just unlawfully detained a federal attorney in front of his own home." Moore's face went through a visible transformation. First confusion as he processed what he was seeing, then realization as he understood the magnitude of his mistake, then panic as he calculated the consequences. His hand released Derek's arm. He stepped back. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. You're a federal attorney." His voice was barely above a whisper, but the body cam caught it clearly. "And you just violated my constitutional rights," Derek said, his voice steady but filled with controlled anger. "You detained me without reasonable suspicion. You demanded identification without legal cause. You grabbed me, physically restrained me, threatened me with arrest, all because you saw a black man unlocking the door to his own home and couldn't imagine he might actually belong here." The crowd of witnesses had grown. Someone counted 14 people with phones out, recording from various angles. The woman who'd first pulled out her phone spoke up. "I saw the whole thing. He was just trying to go inside. The officer stopped him for no reason." The teenager added, "He kept saying he lives there. Why didn't you just check?" Moore looked around at the crowd, at the cameras, at Derek standing calmly with his credentials in hand. He looked at the door with Derek's keys still in the lock. He looked at his own body cam, the little red light indicating it had recorded everything. And in that moment, Officer Dandel Moore realized his career was over. By 7 p.m. that evening, multiple videos from the encounter were circulating on social media. The woman with the dog had posted her footage to Twitter with the caption, "Cop just stopped a black man from entering his own building in Midtown. Watch until the end when he shows he's a federal attorney. This is what profiling looks like." The video had been viewed 50,000 times within the first hour. By midnight, it was over 2 million. By the next morning, it was being covered by local news stations. By the afternoon, it was national news. The Axon Bodycam footage, released 3 days later under public records requests, provided the complete picture. It showed Moore approaching without any visible cause. It captured every word of the exchange. It documented Moore's escalating aggression. It recorded the moment Derek revealed his credentials and Moore's panicked reaction. It was damning,
comprehensive and impossible to explain away. The headlines wrote themselves. Federal civil rights attorney unlawfully detained outside his own home. Rookie cop blocks DOJ attorney from entering his building, career ends in disgrace. Video shows officer racially profiling federal attorney in Midtown incident. Midtown City's black community responded immediately. Within 48 hours, a coalition of civil rights organizations, community leaders, and activist groups had organized a press conference on the steps of City Hall. They demanded Moore's immediate termination, a full investigation into the department's training practices, and policy reforms to prevent similar incidents. The police union issued a statement defending Moore's actions as consistent with officer safety protocols and urging the public to wait for the full investigation before rushing to judgment. The statement was poorly received, with even moderate voices pointing out that the Bodycam footage was the full investigation, that no amount of additional context could justify detaining someone for entering their own home. The Department of Justice, Derek's employer, released a carefully worded statement. "We are aware of the incident involving one of our attorneys. While we cannot comment on ongoing legal matters, we support Mr. Lawson's right to live free from unlawful detention and profiling." Within 2 weeks, Derek had filed a comprehensive civil rights lawsuit in federal court. The defendants were Officer Daniel Moore individually, the Midtown City Police Department, and the city itself. The complaint ran 47 pages and outlined multiple legal violations. Count 1 alleged unlawful detention under the Fourth Amendment. The complaint detailed how Moore had no reasonable suspicion to stop Derek, no articulable fact suggesting criminal activity, and no legal basis for demanding identification or preventing Derek from entering his home. Count 2 alleged racial profiling and discrimination under the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. The complaint argued that Moore's decision to stop Derek was motivated by racial bias, that a white person in identical circumstances would not have been stopped, and that the department's inadequate training on implicit bias enabled this discriminatory conduct. Count 3 alleged use of excessive force. While Moore hadn't used his weapon or injured Derek, the complaint argued that any physical force used during an unlawful detention is, by definition, excessive, and that grabbing and restraining someone without legal justification constitutes a violation of their constitutional rights. Count 4 alleged intentional infliction of emotional distress. The complaint described the humiliation of being treated as a criminal in front of neighbors and strangers, the trauma of being physically grabbed by a police officer, and the lasting psychological impact of the encounter. Count 5 alleged municipal liability, arguing that the city's failure to adequately train officers on implicit bias, its practice of clearing rookies for solo patrol after minimal field training despite documented concerns, and its systemic tolerance of racially motivated stops created the conditions that led to Derek's unlawful detention. The complaint sought $750,000 in damages, attorney's fees, and injunctive relief requiring policy reforms. The city's initial response was defensive. Their attorneys filed a motion to dismiss, arguing that Moore had acted in good faith, that his decision to investigate was within his discretion as a law enforcement officer, and that qualified immunity protected him from liability. Qualified immunity is a legal doctrine that shields government officials, including police officers, from civil lawsuits unless they violated clearly established constitutional rights. It's a controversial protection that critics argue allows officers to violate rights without consequences. But even qualified immunity has limits. It doesn't protect officers who violate rights that any reasonable officer would know are protected. The federal judge assigned to the case, Judge Patricia Henderson, was not sympathetic to the city's arguments. In a scathing order denying the motion to dismiss, she wrote, The body cam footage in this case shows an officer detaining a citizen who was engaged in the entirely lawful activity of entering his own home. The officer had no reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. He had no legal basis for demanding identification. When the citizen asserted his rights, the officer escalated to physical force. These violations are so clear that any reasonable officer would know they crossed constitutional boundaries. Qualified immunity does not apply. The case moved forward. Discovery began. Depositions were scheduled. And as the city's attorneys reviewed the evidence, they realized they had no defense. The body cam footage was devastating. The civilian videos corroborated every aspect of Derek's account. Moore's own training records showed he'd been flagged for poor judgment. His field training officer had noted concerns about racial assumptions. The department's own policies stated that officers must have reasonable suspicion before detaining anyone. Every piece of evidence supported Derek's claims.
Officer Daniel Moore's employment with the Midtown City Police Department ended 14 weeks after the incident. The termination letter was direct and unsparing. Officer Moore's conduct on September 28th constituted gross misconduct and violated department policy, state law, and federal constitutional protections. He detained a citizen without reasonable suspicion. He escalated the encounter through unjustified physical force. He failed to recognize his error even when the citizen clearly identified himself as a resident. His actions brought significant negative attention to the department and demonstrated judgment failures that make him unfit for law enforcement duties. His employment is terminated effective immediately. Moore's name was entered into the National Decertification Index, a database tracking officers who have been fired or resigned under investigation for serious misconduct. The entry would prevent him from being hired by any other law enforcement agency in the country. His career in policing, which had lasted less than a year, was permanently over. Moore released a brief statement through his attorney. "I deeply regret my actions that day. I made serious errors in judgment that I will have to live with. I apologize to Mr. Lawson for the distress I caused." Derek's response was measured. Officer Moore is young. He made choices based on assumptions he didn't examine. But accountability isn't just about one officer. It's about a system that put him on the street with minimal training, ignored warning signs from his evaluators, and created the conditions where a rookie with documented judgment problems was patrolling alone and making decisions that violated people's rights. The reforms mandated by the settlement were comprehensive. The Midtown City Police Department implemented a new policy requiring all officers to complete 12 months of supervised field training before being cleared for solo patrol, an increase from the previous 12 weeks. The policy specifically noted that staffing shortages could not be used as justification for shortening training periods. The department created a mandatory implicit bias recognition program with quarterly refresher training and scenario-based exercises designed to help officers identify and challenge their assumptions. Officers who failed to demonstrate bias awareness would be required to repeat the training before being cleared for patrol duties. A new civilian oversight board was established with authority to review body camera footage from any incident involving allegations of racial profiling or unlawful detention. The board had the power to recommend disciplinary action and policy changes directly to the police chief and city council. The department also adopted a duty to intervene policy, requiring officers who witness unconstitutional conduct by their colleagues to immediately intervene and report the misconduct. Failure to intervene would be treated as seriously as committing the misconduct directly.
Derek testified at a city council hearing 6 months after the settlement. He sat at a table facing the council members, community members filling the seats behind him, cameras recording for public broadcast. "What happened to me shouldn't happen to anyone," he began. "I have every advantage: education, professional credentials, knowledge of the law, resources to fight back, and I was still detained unlawfully, grabbed, threatened, and humiliated in front of my own home. Most people who experience this don't have my advantages. They can't afford attorneys.
They don't know how to articulate constitutional violations. They don't have platforms to demand accountability. He leaned forward, his voice growing more intense. The settlement I received is substantial, but money doesn't erase the humiliation of being treated like a criminal in your own neighborhood. It doesn't undo the violation of being grabbed by an officer who looked at me and saw a threat instead of a human being. It doesn't change the fact that after that day, I felt unsafe approaching my own front door. A council member asked what he hoped would change. Derek didn't hesitate. First, training needs to be longer and better. 12 weeks isn't enough to prepare someone for the responsibility of carrying a badge and a gun. Officers need time to develop judgment, to learn when not to act, to understand that their assumptions can destroy lives. Second, accountability needs to be real. Officer Moore was fired, but how many others have done similar things and faced no consequences? How many black people have been stopped, detained, searched, or arrested without cause, only to have their complaints dismissed or ignored? Third, we need to fundamentally change how we think about policing. An officer saw me entering my home, and his first instinct was suspicion. That's not training failure. That's a cultural problem. Until we address the underlying biases that make black people seem inherently suspicious, no amount of policy reform will prevent these incidents. The council chamber was silent when he finished. Then someone in the audience began clapping. Others joined in. Within seconds, the room erupted in applause. One council member had tears in her eyes. The reforms implemented in Midtown City became a model studied by other departments. The settlement amount sent a clear financial message that unlawful detentions carry real costs, and Derek's visibility as a federal attorney gave the story staying power, keeping it in public consciousness longer than most incidents of police misconduct. But across the country, similar encounters continued to happen. Black people detained while entering their homes, their offices, their cars. Latino people stopped for looking suspicious in their own neighborhoods. Asian people questioned about where they're really from by officers who can't imagine they belong. The system that produced Officer Daniel Moore, the inadequate training, the rushed certification, the ignored warning signs, the cultural biases left unexamined, that system remains largely intact. Reform happens slowly, unevenly, incompletely. For every department that extends training and implements oversight, others continue business as usual.
3 years after the incident, Derek still lives at 437 Riverside Avenue. He still walks to his front door after work. He still inserts his key in the lock. But he also looks over his shoulder first. He notices police cars cruising the street. He tenses when officers are nearby. The encounter with Officer Moore changed him in ways the settlement couldn't address. He continues his work as a civil rights attorney, now with added personal perspective on the violations he investigates.
Afternoon, ma'am. Can I ask what you're doing sitting out here?
Afternoon, officer. I can't see you, sir, but I'm just waiting for the bus.
What's that in your hand? Looks a lot like a weapon.
No, sir. That's my walking stick. I'm blind.
Still, it looks like a weapon to me.
It's just a cane, sir. Helps me find the curb, not hurt anything.
The body camera footage would later show exactly what happened that April 9th, 2023, on a sunny afternoon in Brooklyn, New York. A calm street corner, people walking by, the sound of buses in the distance. On a simple park bench sat Vanessa Green, a black woman in her late 30s. She wore dark sunglasses, held a white walking stick, and waited quietly for her bus. Moments later, a patrol car pulled up. An officer stepped out, hand resting on his holster, and called out, "Hey, what are you doing here?" Vanessa turned her head toward the voice. "Sir, I can't see you. I'm blind. I'm waiting for the bus." The officer glanced at her walking stick. "That looks like a weapon to me." Minutes later, that accusation would escalate into one of the most humiliating and costly mistakes in NYPD history. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. April 9th, 2023 started as an ordinary Sunday in Brooklyn. Vanessa Green had lived in Crown Heights her entire life, 37 years old, an elementary school teacher, a daughter, a friend. She'd lost her sight gradually over the course of 5 years, a degenerative condition that doctors couldn't stop,
only slow down. By the time she turned 32, the world had faded to shapes and light, shadows and sounds. But Vanessa had adapted. She learned to navigate her neighborhood with precision, counted steps from her apartment to the bodega, knew which streets had the smoothest sidewalks, could identify the bus by the pitch of its engine before it even reached her stop. That Sunday, she was heading to her mother's house in Bed-Stuy. Same routine as always. Walk 3 blocks to Fulton Street, catch the B25, ride for 15 minutes, get off at the corner near the old church. Simple. She left her apartment at 2:30 p.m., white cane tapping rhythmically against the pavement. The sun was warm on her face. She could hear children playing basketball in the park across the street, someone's music drifting from an open window, the hum of the city that had always been home. She reached the bus stop at 2:41 p.m. The bench was empty. She sat down, folded her cane across her lap, and waited. The bus wouldn't arrive for another 12 minutes. She didn't know it yet, but she'd never board that bus. At 2:43 p.m., someone across the street made a phone call. Later, the caller would be identified as Patricia Holmes, a 62-year-old resident who'd lived in the neighborhood for 3 years. She told the 911 operator that there was a suspicious woman sitting on a bench with what looked like a metal rod or weapon. The dispatcher asked for more details. Holmes said the woman looked out of place and might be casing the area. The dispatcher noted the location and sent out a call to nearby patrol units. At 2:46 p.m., Officer Michael Trent heard the dispatch on his radio. He was 3 blocks away, sitting in his patrol car, finishing paperwork from a traffic stop. 25 years old, 8 months on the job, eager to prove himself. He'd been raised in Staten Island, joined the academy right out of college. His evaluations noted him as highly vigilant and proactive, words that sounded like compliments but often meant something else. He heard the words suspicious person and possible weapon, and his mind immediately shifted into high alert. This was his chance. He started the engine and headed toward Fulton Street. Vanessa sat on the bench, head tilted slightly, listening to the world around her. She heard footsteps approaching, heavy, deliberate, not the rhythm of someone passing by, someone walking toward her. She turned her head in the direction of the sound. "Hello?" she said. No response. The footsteps stopped about 10 feet away. Then a voice, sharp, authoritative. "Hey, what are you doing here?" Vanessa's stomach tightened. Something about the tone felt wrong, aggressive, accusatory. "Sir," she said carefully, "I can't see you. I'm just waiting for the bus." There was a pause. She could hear breathing. Close. Too close. "What's that in your hand?" the voice demanded. Vanessa looked down, even though she couldn't see what she was holding. "My walking stick," she said. "I'm blind, sir. I use it to navigate." Another pause. Then, "Looks like a weapon to me." Vanessa's heart dropped. Officer Trent's body camera captured everything. The footage shows him standing about 8 feet from the bench, hand resting on his holster, eyes locked on the white cane across Vanessa's lap. In the video, you can see other people walking by, a man with groceries, a woman pushing a stroller. Nobody looks concerned. Nobody looks twice at Vanessa. But Trent sees something different. He steps closer. "Ma'am, I need you to put that down." Vanessa's hands tighten around the cane. "Sir, this is my mobility aid. I need it to walk. I'm blind." "I understand that," though his tone suggests he doesn't. "But I received a call about a suspicious person with a weapon, and right now, you match that description." Vanessa's voice shakes slightly. "A weapon?" "It's a walking stick. It has a reflective strip. It's registered with the city. I need to verify that. How can I verify something I can't see?" "Ma'am, just cooperate." Vanessa takes a slow breath. She's been in uncomfortable situations with police before, stopped and questioned more times than she can count, but never like this. Never with this much hostility over something so fundamental to her existence. "Officer," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "I'm telling you the truth. My name is Vanessa Green. I live 3 blocks from here. I'm a teacher. I'm waiting for my bus. This is my cane. I'm not doing anything wrong." Trent shifts his weight. His hand hasn't left his holster. "I'm going to need to see some ID." I don't carry a wallet when I travel alone. I keep everything on my phone. It's in my pocket. Don't reach for anything. Then how do I show you ID? The question hangs in the air. Across the street, a teenager named Marcus Riley is walking home from the corner store. He sees the patrol car, sees the officer standing over a woman on a bench. Something about the scene feels wrong. He pulls out his phone and starts recording.
Officer Michael Trent had been taught to trust his instincts. At the academy, instructors drilled it into every recruit. If something feels off, it probably is. Better to be cautious than sorry. Better to investigate than ignore. But what they didn't teach, or didn't teach well enough, was how to distinguish between instinct and assumption, between caution and paranoia, between vigilance and prejudice. Standing on that street corner, looking at Vanessa Green, Trent's instincts were screaming. Black woman, sitting alone, holding a long metal object, not making eye contact, giving vague answers about why she was there. Every box in his mental checklist was getting marked. He didn't see a blind woman waiting for a bus. He saw a threat. "Ma'am," he says, his voice hardening, "I'm going to ask you one more time. Put down the object." Vanessa's grip tightens on her cane. "It's not an object, it's my cane. I told you I'm blind, and I told you to put it down. If I put it down, I can't walk. I can't navigate. Do you understand that?" Trent takes another step forward. "What I understand is that you're refusing to comply with a lawful order." Vanessa's breath catches. This is escalating too fast. She can hear it in his voice, the shift from suspicion to anger. She knows this pattern. She's heard stories from friends, from family members, stories that don't end well. She tries a different approach, softer, calmer. "Officer, please, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just trying to explain. I'm visually impaired. This cane is essential for me. It's not a weapon, it's a tool. It's how I exist in the world." Her words are measured, patient. The kind of de-escalation she's had to learn because the alternative is too dangerous. But Trent doesn't hear patience. He hears resistance. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. I'm trying to make you understand." "I understand perfectly. Then why are you treating me like a criminal?" The question cuts through the moment. Trent's face flushes. "I'm not. You approached me with your hand on your gun. You demanded I put down my mobility aid. You accused me of carrying a weapon. All I'm doing is sitting on a bench waiting for a bus. So yes, you're treating me like a criminal." Across the street, Marcus is still recording. He zooms in, making sure the footage is clear. A woman walking her dog stops on the corner, watching. She pulls out her phone, too. More people are starting to notice. Trent can feel eyes on him, can sense the shift in the atmosphere. He knows he's being watched, being recorded, and that knowledge makes him more defensive than less. "Ma'am, stand up." "Why?" "Because I'm telling you to. That's not a reason. It's all the reason you need." Vanessa doesn't move. She can't see the officer's face, can't read his body language, can't gauge how close he is to doing something irreversible. All she has is his voice. And right now, his voice is telling her she's in danger. "Officer, please," she says quietly. "I'm scaring me." "Then comply."
I am complying. I'm sitting here. I'm talking to you. I haven't moved. What more do you want from me? I want you to follow instructions. His voice echoes down the block. People turn. Traffic slows. Trent realizes he's yelling. He tries to regain control, lowering his voice, but not his intensity. "Last morning," he says, "put down the stick and stand up. Now." Vanessa's hands are shaking. She can feel tears building behind her dark glasses, but she refuses to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of him. "I can't stand without my cane," she says, her voice breaking slightly. "Don't you understand? I can't see." For a split second, something flickers across Trent's face. Doubt, maybe, or recognition, but it passes too quickly. He reaches for his radio. "Dispatch, I need backup at Fulton and Bedford. Subject refusing to comply. Copy that, Unit 12. Backup en route. She hears the radio crackle, hears the word backup, and knows this is about to get worse. Please, she whispers, please don't do this. But Officer Trent had already made his decision. He stepped forward, reaching for her arm, and that's when everything fell apart. Racist cop demands blind woman surrender her walking stick. Got slapped with $20 million lawsuit. Hook. The body camera footage would later show exactly what happened that April 9th, 2023, on a sunny afternoon in Brooklyn, New York. A calm street corner, people walking by, the sound of buses in the distance. On a simple park bench sat Vanessa Green, a black woman in her late 30s. She wore dark sunglasses, held a white walking stick, and waited quietly for her bus. Moments later, a patrol car pulled up. An officer stepped out, hand resting on his holster, and called out, "Hey, what are you doing here?" Vanessa turned her head toward the voice. "Sir, I can't see you. I'm blind. I'm waiting for the bus." The officer glanced at her walking stick. "That looks like a weapon to me." Minutes later, that accusation would escalate into one of the most humiliating and costly mistakes in NYPD history. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light.
April 9th, 2023 started as an ordinary Sunday in Brooklyn. Vanessa Breen had lived in Crown Heights her entire life. 37 years old, an elementary school teacher, a daughter, a friend. She'd lost her sight gradually over the course of 5 years, a degenerative condition that doctors couldn't stop, only slow down. By the time she turned 32, the world had faded to shapes and light, shadows and sounds. But Vanessa had adapted. She learned to navigate her neighborhood with precision, counted steps from her apartment to the bodega, knew which streets had the smoothest sidewalks, could identify the bus by the pitch of its engine before it even reached her stop. That Sunday, she was heading to her mother's house in Bed-Stuy. Same routine as always. Walk 3 blocks to Fulton Street, catch the B25, ride for 15 minutes, and get off at the corner near the old church. Simple. She left her apartment at 2:30 p.m., white cane tapping rhythmically against the pavement. The sun was warm on her face. She could hear children playing basketball in the park across the street, someone's music drifting from an open window, the hum of the city that had always been home. She reached the bus stop at 2:41 p.m. The bench was empty. She sat down, folded her cane across her lap, and waited. The bus wouldn't arrive for another 12 minutes. She didn't know it yet, but she'd never board that bus. At 2:43 p.m., someone across the street made a phone call. Later, the caller would be identified as Patricia Holmes, a 62-year-old resident who'd lived in the neighborhood for 3 years. She told the 911 operator that there was a suspicious woman sitting on a bench with what looked like a metal rod or weapon. The dispatcher asked for more details. Holmes said the woman looked out of place and might be casing the area. The dispatcher noted the location and sent out a call to nearby patrol units. At 2:46 p.m., Michael Trent heard the dispatch on his radio. He was 3 blocks away, sitting in his patrol car, finishing paperwork from a traffic stop. 25 years old, 8 months on the job, eager to prove himself. He'd been raised in Staten Island, joined the academy right out of college. His evaluations noted him as highly vigilant and proactive, words that sounded like compliments but often meant something else. He heard the words suspicious person and possible weapon, and his mind immediately shifted into high alert. This was his chance. He started the engine and headed toward Fulton Street. Vanessa sat on the bench, head tilted slightly, listening to the world around her. She heard footsteps approaching, heavy, deliberate, not the rhythm of someone passing by, someone walking toward her. She turned her head in the direction of the sound. "Hello?" she said. No response.
The footsteps stopped about 10 feet away. Then, a voice, sharp, authoritative. "Hey, what are you doing here?" Vanessa's stomach tightened. Something about the tone felt wrong, aggressive, accusatory. "Sir, I can't see you. I'm just waiting for the bus." There was a pause. She could hear breathing, close, too close. "What's not in your hand?" the voice demanded. Vanessa looked down, even though she couldn't see what she was holding. "My walking stick. I'm blind, sir. I use it to navigate." Another pause.
Looks like a weapon to me. Vanessa's heart dropped. Officer Trent's body camera captured everything. The footage shows him standing about 8 feet from the bench, hand resting on his holster, eyes locked on the white cane across Vanessa's lap. In the video, you can see other people walking by. A man with groceries. A woman pushing a stroller. Nobody looks concerned. Nobody looks twice at Vanessa. But Trent sees something different. He steps closer. "Ma'am, I need you to put that down." Vanessa's hands tightened around the cane. "Sir, this is my mobility aid. I need it to walk. I'm blind." "I understand that," Trent says, though his tone suggests he doesn't. "But I received a call about a suspicious person with a weapon, and right now you match that description." Vanessa's voice shakes slightly. "A weapon? It's a walking stick. It has a reflective strip. It's registered with the city. I need to verify that." "How can I verify something I can't see?" "Ma'am, just cooperate." Vanessa takes a slow breath. She's been in uncomfortable situations with police before, stopped and questioned more times than she can count, but never like this. Never with this much hostility over something so fundamental to her existence. "Officer," she says, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "I'm telling you the truth. My name is Vanessa Grain. I live 3 blocks from here. I'm a teacher. I'm waiting for my bus. This is my cane. I'm not doing anything wrong." Trent shifts his weight. His hand hasn't left his holster. "I'm going to need to see some ID. I don't carry a wallet when I travel alone. I keep everything on my phone. It's in my pocket. Don't reach for anything." "Then how do I show you ID?" The question hangs in the air. Across the street, a teenager named Marcus Riley is walking home from the corner store. He sees the patrol car, sees the officer standing over a woman on a bench. Something about the scene feels wrong. He pulls out his phone and starts recording. Act 2. Suspicion and escalation. Officer Michael Trent had been taught to trust his instincts. At the academy, instructors drilled it into every recruit. If something feels off, it probably is. Better to be cautious than sorry. Better to investigate than ignore. But what they didn't teach, or didn't teach well enough, was how to distinguish between instinct and assumption, between caution and paranoia, between vigilance and prejudice. Standing on that street corner, looking at Vanessa Green, Trent's instincts were screaming. Black woman, sitting alone, holding a long metal object, not making eye contact, giving vague answers about why she was there. Every box in his mental checklist was getting marked. He didn't see a blind woman waiting for a bus. He saw a threat. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one more time. Put down the object." Vanessa's grip tightens on her cane. "Sir, this is my mobility aid. I need it to walk. I'm blind." "I understand that," Trent says, though his tone suggests he doesn't. "But I received a call about a suspicious person with a weapon, and right now you match that description." Vanessa's voice shakes slightly. "A weapon? It's a walking stick. It has a reflective strip. It's registered with the city. I need to verify that." "How can I verify something I can't see?" "Ma'am, just cooperate." Vanessa's breath catches. She's escalating too fast. She can hear it in his voice, the shift from suspicion to anger. She knows this pattern. She's heard stories from friends, from family members, stories that don't end well. She tries a different approach, softer, calmer. "Officer, please. I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just trying to explain. I'm visually impaired. This cane is essential for me. It's not a weapon. It's a tool. It's how I exist in the world." Her words are measured, patient, the kind of de-escalation she's had to learn because the alternative is too dangerous. But Trent doesn't hear patience. He hears resistance. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "I'm trying to make you understand.
I understand perfectly. Then why are you treating me like a criminal? The question cuts through the moment. Trent's face flushes. I'm not. You approach me with your hand on your gun. You demanded I put down my mobility aid. You accused me of carrying a weapon. All I'm doing is sitting on a bench waiting for a bus. So yes, you're treating me like a criminal. Across the street, Marcus is still recording. He zooms in, making sure the footage is clear. A woman walking her dog stops on the corner, watching. She pulls out her phone too. More people are starting to notice. Trent can feel eyes on him, can sense the shift in the atmosphere. He knows he's being watched, being recorded, and that knowledge makes him more defensive, not less. Ma'am, stand up. Vanessa's body goes rigid. Why? Because I'm telling you to. That's not a reason. It's all the reason you need. Vanessa doesn't move. She can't see the officer's face, can't read his body language, can't gauge how close he is to doing something irreversible. All she has is his voice. And right now, his voice is telling her she's in danger. Officer, she says quietly, you're scaring me. Then comply. I am complying. I'm sitting here. I'm talking to you. I haven't moved. What more do you want from me? I want you to follow instructions. His voice echoes down the block. People turn. Traffic slows. Trent realizes he's yelling. He tries to regain control, lowering his voice, but not his intensity. Last warning, he says. Put down the stick and stand up. Now. Vanessa's hands are shaking. She can feel tears building behind her dark glasses, but she refuses to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of him. I can't stand without my cane, she says, her voice breaking slightly. Don't you understand? I can't see. For a split second, something flickers across Trent's face. Doubt, maybe, or recognition, but it passes too quickly. He reaches for his radio. Dispatch, I need backup at Fulton and Bedford. Subject refusing to comply. Copy that, Unit 12, backup en route. Vanessa hears the radio crackle, hears the word backup, and knows this is about to get worse. Please don't do this. But Officer Trent has already made his decision. He steps forward, reaching for her arm. And that's when everything falls apart. Act 3. The violation. The body camera footage from this moment would later be analyzed frame by lawyers, activists, disability advocates, and the media. Everyone would see the same thing. Officer Michael Trent, hand outstretched, grabs Vanessa Green's left arm just above the elbow. His grip is tight, controlling, the kind of hold designed to move someone whether they want to move or not. Vanessa gasps. Sir, stand up, Trent commands, pulling upward. Vanessa tries to stand, but her cane is still across her lap, and without it in position, she has no balance, no orientation. She stumbles, her free hand reaching out reflexively for something to steady herself. She finds nothing but air. Please, I can't see. Her cane clatters to the ground, rolling across the sidewalk with a hollow metallic sound that the body camera microphone picks up with painful clarity. Stop resisting, Trent shouts. I'm not resisting. You're hurting me. From across the street, Marcus's voice cuts through. Yo, she's blind, man, she's blind. Another voice joins in. Leave her alone. Trent ignores them. He's committed now. In his mind, he's crossed a threshold. If he backs down now, he looks weak. If he admits he made a mistake, he looks incompetent. So he doubles down. He pulls harder, trying to force Vanessa to her feet. She's crying now, tears streaming down her face behind her dark glasses. You don't have to do this, officer, she says, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm not a threat. I'm not dangerous. I'm just trying to catch a bus. For a moment, just a fraction of a second, Trent's hand loosens because he hears it, the raw truth in her voice, the absence of aggression, the presence of fear. He sees her face, really sees it, and realizes she's terrified, not defiant, not resisting, terrified. But the moment passes. His radio crackles. Backup is 2 minutes out. He needs this situation under control before they arrive. Needs to be able to say he handled it. Needs to justify the call he made. Turn around, he says, reaching for his handcuffs. Vanessa's entire body goes stiff. No, please. You're being detained for obstruction. Obstruction of what? Turn around. Vanessa's hand brushes against Trent's badge as she tries to steady herself. Her fingers find the cold metal, the engraved numbers, the symbol of authority that's supposed to mean protection. She holds on to it for just a second, and in that second, she says something that will be quoted in every news article, every court document, every social media post about this incident. "You don't have to treat me this way, officer. I'm not a threat." Her voice is soft, pleading, human, and it breaks something in the people watching. The woman with the dog steps forward. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" Marcus is still recording, phone raised high. "This is police brutality. Y'all seeing this?" More people gather, a small crowd forming on the corner. Witnesses. Trent realizes he's surrounded. Not physically. He's still the one with the badge and the gun. But socially, digitally. Every phone is a camera. Every camera is evidence. His hands drop from Vanessa's arm. She sinks back onto the bench, sobbing quietly, her hands searching the ground for her cane. Someone picks it up and hands it to her. A man's voice, gentle. "Here you go, miss. You okay?" Vanessa takes the cane, holding it against her chest like a lifeline. "Thank you," she whispers. Trent stands there frozen, his mind racing. He can hear his heartbeat in his ears, can feel the weight of the mistake settling on his shoulders. His radio crackles again. "Unit 12, backup is on scene." Another patrol car pulls up. 2 officers step out, taking in the scene. A crowd of people, phones recording, a woman crying on a bench, and Trent standing there looking like he's just woken up from a nightmare. One of the officers, a woman maybe 10 years older than Trent, approaches him. "What's going on here, Trent?" He opens his mouth, closes it, tries again. I thought she had a weapon." The senior officer looks at Vanessa, looks at the white cane with its reflective strip, looks at the dark glasses. "She's blind," the officer says quietly. Trent's voice cracks. I know now." The senior officer's expression hardens. "Get back to your vehicle." "But now." Trent walks back to his patrol car, his body camera still recording, capturing every humiliating step. The senior officer approaches Vanessa, kneeling down to her level. "Ma'am, I am so sorry. Are you hurt?" Vanessa shakes her head, even though her arm is throbbing where Trent grabbed her. "Can we call someone for you? Family? A friend?" "My mother," Vanessa says, her voice hollow. "I was going to see my mother." The officer helps Vanessa call her mother, who arrives 20 minutes later, furious and terrified. By then, Trent is long gone, back at the precinct, sitting in silence, staring at his hands, and Marcus's video is already uploading to Twitter.
The video goes viral in 6 hours. By midnight, it has 3 million views. By Monday morning, it's on every major news network in the country. NYPD officer accuses blind woman's cane of being a weapon. Brooklyn woman assaulted by police while waiting for a bus. Another day, another case of racial profiling. The hashtags spread like wildfire. Hashtag her cane not a weapon and hashtag justice for Vanessa. Disability rights organizations issue statements. Civil rights groups demand accountability. The mayor's office scrambles to respond. The NYPD releases a statement Monday afternoon. "We are aware of an incident involving a visually impaired citizen in Brooklyn. The matter is under internal review, and we are committed to ensuring accountability and transparency." The statement is met with immediate backlash. One Twitter user responds, "Under review, she's blind. He grabbed her. What is there to review?" Another, "This is what ableism looks like. This is what racism looks like. This is what happens when we don't train cops properly." By Tuesday, the story has reached national prominence. CNN runs a segment titled, "When Mobility Aids Are Mistaken for Weapons." Fox News brings in a panel to debate whether the officer acted reasonably. MSNBC interviews disability advocates who explain, with painful patience, what a white cane is and why it's protected under federal law. Vanessa Green doesn't speak publicly at first. She's too shaken, too exhausted. She stays home from work, stops answering her phone, sits in her apartment with the curtains drawn, replaying the incident over and over in her mind. Her mother, Lorraine, stays with her,
makes her tea, holds her when she cries. "I just wanted to catch the bus," Vanessa says one night, her voice breaking. "I wasn't doing anything wrong." "I know, baby. I know." On Wednesday, Vanessa's attorney holds a press conference. His name is David Chen, a civil rights lawyer with a reputation for taking on high-profile cases against police departments. He stands at a podium outside the Brooklyn courthouse, Vanessa seated beside him, her mother on her other side. Chen speaks first. "My client, Vanessa Green, is a 37-year-old elementary school teacher. She is a beloved member of her community. She is blind, and on April 9th, while simply waiting for a bus, she was assaulted by Officer Michael Trent of the NYPD. He pauses, letting the weight of the words settle. Officer Trent approached Miss Green without cause. He demanded she surrender her mobility aid, a federally protected assistive device. When she explained that she was blind and needed her cane to navigate, he ignored her. He grabbed her. He tried to detain her. He treated her humanity as a threat." Chen's voice sharpens. "This is not just about one officer's bad judgment. This is about a system that fails to train officers to recognize disability, that fails to protect the most vulnerable members of our society, that allows bias, racial bias, ableist bias to dictate who deserves dignity and who doesn't." He looks directly at the cameras. "Today, we are filing a $20 million civil rights lawsuit against the City of New York and Officer Michael Trent. We are seeking not just compensation for Miss Green's trauma, but systemic reform. We are demanding mandatory disability awareness training for every officer in the NYPD. We are demanding accountability." The press erupts with questions. Chen raises a hand. "Ms. Green would like to say a few words." Vanessa leans toward the microphone. Her hands are folded in her lap, her cane resting against her chair. She's wearing her dark glasses, but her face is visible, exhausted, emotional, but resolute. She speaks quietly, but every word carries weight. "I didn't want this attention. I didn't want to be on the news. I didn't want to file a lawsuit. I just wanted to catch a bus." Her voice cracks slightly, but she continues. "But what happened to me